Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the first episode of Love is Blind Argentina. The first thing I noticed was that this is a good looking cast. Like, generally speaking, I didn't find one person unattractive, so I thought it was interesting that everyone was in pretty good shape. I don't know if that's a reflection of Argentina or if they were just very specific while casting for the show. I feel like in other versions of Love is Blind, there was more diversity in terms of the shapes and sizes people came in, but this is just episode one, things can change as we go on. Now, one of the first people we meet is Agustina. She's 29 years old and is a very strong minded individual. We learn that she doesn't believe in going 50-50 with a man and that she's never been in a serious relationship before. Like, she's just only had flings here and there, no serious commitment. She meets with Santiago, who's also 29, and he owns a telecommunications company. He's dated many women casually over the years, but he never was able to form a genuine connection with anyone. So at first, it seems like Augustina and Santiago are vibing, but then he goes to sleep, has a dream where he sees the name Emily, and then bam, the next day in the pods, he's speaking to a girl named Emily. I thought this was a really interesting coincidence. The dream really seems to have influenced Santiago, and he appears to be very open with Emily. Emily is 24, she's a journalist and a makeup artist. We also learned that she was previously in an abusive relationship. She and Santiago find that they have some similarities, like how both of them live on the west side, they both love soccer, and they both also come from humble and hardworking families. She shares a very traumatic story with Santiago, telling him that someone once robbed her, stole her car, and took advantage of her. She starts to cry and shares that she doesn't open up and trust men easily, but she trusts Santiago. And I think this was a huge step for her to open up like this. And honestly, I feel like him sharing his dream about her name made it easier for her to open up. Emily returns to the women's quarters and shares that Santiago dreamt of her name, which catches Augustina's attention, and she gets really upset by this. The next time Augustina sees Santiago, she confronts him and tells him he's basically made up his mind already. But in his interview, Santiago says that even though he had a beautiful dream about Emily, he feels his personality is more compatible with Augustina because they both keep things real and tell it like it is. But Augustina is halfway checked out and is really put off by Santiago. She continues to tell him like he made a really big mistake by sharing his dream because in her opinion that's something that should have been saved for when he was proposing. Otherwise he's basically canceling all of his possible matches, and I agree with her. But at this point he doesn't want to rule her out and they agree to talk again the next day. I can understand why Santiago would want to keep the door open because he literally just met Emily and I'm sure they need to go get to know each other more. Um, Before making a final decision. It just doesn't work out that well because Emily shared the dream with the other women, so obviously that's going to make things harder for Santiago. And then Augustina tells Emily that Santiago told her that she was his top choice and that he's playing both sides, which naturally really upsets Emily. And the next time Santiago meets Emily, she tells him she's sad because she doesn't want to be anyone's second option and she doesn't like playing games. She basically is confronting him because Augustina has told her that Santiago is saying one thing to her but then doing another thing. Santiago tells Emily that Augustina was his first choice, but that changed when he met Emily. Emily then tells him there was a reason her name appeared in his dream and that it's not a common name in their area. I really felt like they were putting way too much weight in this dream he had. Even in his interview, Santiago kind of acknowledges that sharing his dream created like these really high expectations, and when expectations are that high, it leaves room for disappointment. He then asks Emily what it is about him that makes him her top choice. And I'm glad he asked her this because it it felt like she was really influenced by his dream. Uh, um, so she tells him that she feels really connected. She likes talking to him and thinks he's a nice guy. I didn't feel like this response had enough substance to it, though. It felt really generalized, but anyway. Later in the men's quarters, Santiago tells the guys that Emily is still his top choice, but his mind and his heart are not in sync because his mind tells him to keep talking with Agustina. He shares that Agustina is a lot like his ex, and that's probably a red flag, Santiago. Why would you want to keep talking to someone who reminds you of your ex? Like, run for the hills. But then the next time he meets Augustina, this girl just goes off on him. She starts to rant about his decision to share his dream and how that canceled his other options. She then says she considers Emily to be a good friend of hers, and even though she and Santiago agreed to get to know each other a little better, she doesn't feel comfortable doing that. And I completely agree with her. I understand why Santiago might have wanted to leave the door open while he was getting to know both women better, but the fact that he's already told Emily she's his top choice, it just looks shady that he'd continue talking to another woman. Augustina says in her interview that she doesn't feel like he's being honest, but I felt like he was just being passive and just going with the flow, if that makes sense. She does not let him even get a word in because she's just ranting this entire time and he tries to speak up as she's ranting and she just shuts him down and she says, "Believe me when I tell you, I'm a queen. I am a queen and I want to be treated like one." I was like, "Go, Augustina, you tell him." She's coming off as really aggressive though at this point, but I understand her frustration because she feels like he's playing her and playing Emily. They both finally decide to end things, and I'm really glad Augustina voiced her frustrations to him and closed the door because it didn't seem like Santiago was going to end things with her. So now with Augustina out of the picture, Santiago can give all his attention to Emily. So I feel like, she really did him a favor there. Santiago and Emily meet again, and he tells her, beyond the dream he's had, she was always his top choice, and that won't change. Well, yeah, it won't change now because Augustina closed the door on you and lies. Like, she was not always his top choice, but anyway, he tells her he loves spending time with her after their date, and he says in his interview that any doubts he had about her were erased. His mind and heart are set on Emily. I really wonder how things would have turned out if Santiago never had that dream. Like, would he have still chosen Emily? I just feel like the dream made a big impact on all of them. But regardless, they ended up choosing each other and they seem like a good match. I think they're really good together. But the next time they meet in the pods, Emily drops this bombshell on him. She tells him even though she trusted him from the start, she was scared he was playing games with her and at times he was her second choice. Santiago just feels deceived and it's making him rethink things. She tells him, she's telling him this because she didn't want to start this journey together by lying to him. But it's a little late for that because the journey has already begun, Emily. So, like, what do you mean? Santiago says he just needs time to process it. She asks him if he's surprised, and he says, yeah, because, you've been my top choice from the start. Okay, hold up there, Santiago. That's not true. Have we forgotten about Agustina already? Lies. Like, you were not always making Emily the top. But anyway, she goes, in my heart, you weren't second. I was reacting to my own insecurities. I don't understand why she told him this. I know she told him that she wanted to be honest, but there really are some things you don't need to be so honest about, especially if the reaction is going to cause doubts. Santiago shares this with the guys in the men's lounge, and he keeps saying how she was always his number one, no question. One of the guys tells him he shouldn't worry about this at all because it's so trivial, and I was completely with him because it really is trivial. At the same time, I feel like Emily didn't need to share this. She didn't need to be so honest, but even though she did, it isn't that big of a deal because they've both now chosen each other, so why hash out the past? It is, ironically, it's a little hypocritical because she was upset with Santiago initially with the whole Agustina situation, but then she was doing the same thing. But she does acknowledge that she did this out of her own insecurity, so anyway, Santiago doesn't understand why she lied to him and thinks if she's going to lie to him about the little things, who knows if she'll lie about bigger things. Again, I didn't think it was that serious, but he's triggered. They end up moving on from this, thank God, because it really wasn't that big of an issue. In their next date in the pod, Santiago sends Emily flowers, and it's her first time getting flowers, so she's really happy. He tells her he loves her so much and that he forgives her because he's madly in love with her. He also thanks her for her honesty. In her interview, Emily says she doesn't regret sharing it because she thinks he would have found out anyway. I think the real reason Emily confessed to him was because she might have thought that he would have found out once they rewatched the show. So maybe that's why she wanted to come clean to him first, just in case there were scenes of her in the show where she was considering someone else as her top choice. Her fears never came to light though, because just watching episode 1, the only man we see her speaking to is Santiago. Santiago then proposes to Emily and she says yes, making them the first couple to become engaged on the show. Now, this couple aside, we also meet Marino, who is an audiovisual producer and broadcaster, and he's 45 years old. He asks all the women he speaks to stand up in front of the screen and raise their glasses. I didn't think this was a big deal, but later on, when the women compare notes, they think this gesture was he was doing with everyone, like they thought he was being a player by doing this gesture with everyone. He confesses in his interview that he does give off a fuckboy vibe, but he thinks one of his main strengths is that he's in touch with his emotional side, which didn't make sense to me. Like, how do you call yourself a fuckboy and then say you're emotionally in touch? Make it make sense. Anyway, he starts talking to Maria Emilia, who is 41. They both have children. Marino has a 12-year-old daughter, and Maria has a 23-year-old son, which she had when she was 17. So she was a very young mother and had to grow up quickly. She shares how she had to prioritize work to make money for her son, and also says that she has a good relationship with the father of her child. Marino also shares that he's on good terms with the mother of his child, and I really liked hearing that. I think it says a lot about a person if they can maintain good ties with their ex-partners, especially when they have children. It just shows maturity, and Maria especially comes off as a mature woman. Like, I liked her a lot. But there's trouble in paradise with Marino because we get a scene from the women's lounge where the women are talking and saying they don't want to talk to Marino again because they think he's a player. They describe him as being that one guy who wants to charm everyone. Maria hears this but says she wants to make sure her thoughts are unique to her own experience. I really love this about her, and again, it shows how mature she is as a person by not judging someone based on the opinions of others. At the same time, where there's smoke, there's fire, because a little later we also get a scene from the men's lounge where the men are questioning Marino's intentions because they don't think he's serious about the experiment. They don't think he's here for the right reasons. So we're getting feedback from both sides about Marino, from the men's lounge, the women's lounge, that Marino possibly is here for the wrong reasons. But Marino actually gets confronted on his tactics by one of the women during a pod date, and she asks him, was there something about toasting in front of the screen that you enjoyed, like a sort of ceremony with the girls you connected with? And he goes, I was just being spontaneous with everyone. I wasn't playing games. It wasn't a strategy. I just thought of it in the hallway. Marino doesn't understand why it was such a big deal to the women, and neither do I. I don't know if something is getting lost in translation here, or the show just didn't portray it accurately, but the way Marino was portrayed in this first episode, at least, I didn't feel like he was being a player. I think the show could have done a better job at showing us exactly why everyone was thinking Marino wasn't being serious, because the clips we saw weren't enough, at least for me. I didn't understand. We then cut to his date with Maria, and he wants to clarify things with her. He tells her someone brought up the moment where he wanted to get close to the screen, and he confesses that he did that a couple times. And she says, yeah, you did that with me, but she says she thought it was a nice gesture. Marino is relieved, and he's like, so it didn't ruin it when you heard I did that with the others? And Maria's like, no, she was fine with it. Marino's just relieved, and Maria shares in her interview that she feels their energy is aligned, which she likes. um, Maria and I are out of the loop here because everyone's thinking he's a player, and me and Maria are just like, how? When? Explain it. Anyway, in their next pods date, Marino and Maria start having a semi steamy conversation where she describes what she's wearing to him. He goes, ooh, you gotta stop that. Are you trying to kill me over here? And she goes, no, I'm just telling you so you can better imagine what I look like. And then he goes, in my mind, I'm imagining my hand touching your cheek. My breathing gets soft and slow while my other hand starts to gently slide down your body. Oh my god, I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable because I was thinking, how far is this going to go? Like, Marino, chill out. He shares in his interview that the chemistry he has with Maria is very intense, and Maria likes that Marino is an open person. Maria is also talking to Mauricio, who is 42. We learned that whenever he thinks of family and relationships, it's hard for him to talk about these topics because he didn't have a stable family life when he was young. He shares that he's gone to therapy like the past couple of years and has been working on healing himself. I really liked learning this about him. I have a deep appreciation for people who recognize that they have issues and they take action to resolve them. So my first impression of Mauricio was good until his first date with Maria, because while he was talking to her, he seemed to be dodging her questions. Like, she asked him how old he was, and he went, old enough to realize that this is crazy and also see the beauty in it. Then she asked him if he's old enough to know he's 100% ready to commit to marriage or no, and then he goes, I'm already committed to life. Like, answer the damn questions, Mauricio. She asks him to describe himself, and he goes, the best person you could ever meet. I was just face palming, but Mauricio did share in the beginning that he has a hard time opening up, so I guess we're getting to see this in real time. Maria also said in her interview that he's joking too much, which makes it hard to tell if he's taking this seriously or not. We do learn that he has a daughter, so just like Maria, he's a parent too. Mauricio likes Maria's strong personality, and that's something he wants in his life. In their next meeting, Maria confronts him and says, she doesn't think he was being serious about this because he was joking around too much, but he reassures her that he is serious about this. There's one point where Mauricio asks her, "What if you're taller than me?" And she says she's fine with that. I was really surprised to hear this because generally a lot of women have an issue if the guy is shorter than them, and I always believed this was a universal experience, but apparently that's not the case for Maria. And it made me wonder, is it just Maria, or do Argentinian women in general not care about height? I think it might just be Maria because she seems a bit more easygoing and more mature. That's just the vibe I got. Maria tells him that he's in her top 10 on her list of considerations. She tells him she needs to get to know him better and she wants him to open up more to her. She also says that she doesn't know him very well, and he goes, "Sounds like a demand." Of course, it's a demand, Mauricio. Look where you are. I mean, the entire point of going on this show is to open up to someone else and potentially marry them. I was really wondering what brought Mauricio on the show if he wasn't ready to open up like that. Maria says in her interview that he comes off as evasive, but she's still interested in knowing him on a deeper level. Mauricio then tells her she's the only woman he looked forward to speaking to, and then she goes, "Guess I'll find out if you're lying to me." And then he goes, "Sounds like a threat. Great way to end the conversation." I was a bit confused at this point. Like, was he offended by what she said? Did they end the date on an awkward note? I don't know. Um, then we meet Tom and Florfi, who are both 27. Tom works in advertising and also works as a DJ. He shared that a non negotiable for him is that his other half needs to be a good person. That is such a generalized response. What makes someone a good person anyway? It's such a subjective statement. It wasn't giving anything, Tom. Florfi is a personal trainer and also has an online business where she helps women better themselves by transforming their habits. She thinks freedom and great communication are the key to a good relationship, and I agree with that. She's traveled a lot and now she wants to settle down and start a family. Florfi finds Tom to be authentic and connects with his vibe, and Tom liked her voice and her lifestyle. Tom also meets Florencia, who is 28, and she's an accountant. She has four cats, which she considers to be her family. She's into the law of attraction and manifestation and has been single for 4 years and wants to fall in love again. She tells Tom that she likes to go out dancing, go to concerts and music festivals. She asks him how she should remember him after their first date, and Tom says he thinks his energy stands out. He lost me there because the vibes Tom gave me were very laid back and easygoing. I didn't detect a whole lot of energy from him, but I did feel like Florencia was very energetic. When it comes to vibes, I actually feel like Tom and Florphy shared the same type of energy because she also gave me a very laid back type of vibe, as in they're both people who like to go with the flow. But Tom ends up telling Florencia that she is at the top of his list, which I was very surprised by. In his next date with Florencia, she tells Tom that he is her top choice, and that's why she hasn't been sharing anything with the other girls. And at this, he asks her if she's the jealous type, and in her interview, she says she does feel a little jealous that he's talking to a bunch of other girls, but she tells him he's allowed to talk to other women on these dates. Tom says for him, he has no room in his life for a relationship that's toxic. We then cut to Tom's next date with Florfi, and Florfi tells him she would never stick her nose in her partner's private space, like checking their phones and reading their texts. Florfi really feels trust keeps relationships alive and even says that she's not a jealous person. And Tom feels Florfi and him are on the same page. And so am I. Just going back to the vibes, I definitely feel like he connected with her more than Florencia. But right now in episode 1, he's already told Florencia that she is his number one. So I'm interested to see what happens with them. Will Tom choose Florencia or will he choose Florfi? I'm really rooting for Florfi to end up with Tom because she seems to be a better fit, in my opinion at least. So, those were all the connections revealed to us in episode 1, guys. We've ended this episode with one engagement, which is between Santiago and Emily, and we have Maria, who is torn between Marino and Mauricio, and Tom, who is torn between Florfi and Florencia. If you enjoyed this reaction, please like and subscribe to stay tuned for my reaction to episode 2 of Love is Blind Argentina. See you next time!